Welcome to Literally Books, the podcast. My name is Magda.
And I'm Lindsay.
And today we're going to be doing a Wicked recap. And I am so excited about this.
So if you haven't seen the movie yet, there are probably going to be some serious spoilers or the play. And we're going to talk very lightly about the book because there's just too many adaptations to talk about when it comes to this text.
Yeah, this is based on a book that came out in 1995. Which I haven't read, but Lindsay has, so I'm going to be relying on her quite heavily.
My memory from 10, 12, 15 years ago when I read it, it's been forever. It's been way more than 15 years. I'm not going to do that math. Yeah. It's been a long time.
Yeah, and same, like, I think for me, I watched this. This was my very first musical that I had ever seen in my life, and it was over 15 years ago, too. So we're going to go off of some very vague memories over here, but that's okay. We need that sometimes.
Look, this isn't a college course, all right? This is a podcast. If you want a college course, go look online or sign up for Coursera. It's not going to be here.
We are here for the vibes.
Yeah, Magda literally said that. She was like, it's a vibes only episode for me.
All right, but I guess before we get started, what have you been reading?
Magda, I don't even know. I can't even tell you what I've been reading because I'm still chugging through Lincoln the Bardo. I have a large number of books I'm going to start. I'm going to start James, I think.
It's time.
But I have nothing really to report because I'm really still in the thick of a slump.
Yeah, it's been rough. I am also in the middle of Margot's Got Money Troubles by Ruthie Thorpe, who was also at the Texas Book Fest, and we just didn't get to see her.
We missed so many people. I don't know how that was possible.
That is the one thing that, and I don't think we called this out in our Texas Book Fest episode. What made me upset, it was that there were so many good events that were overlapping each other, and it just made the decision of like, which ones do we go to? Mm-hmm. Actually, big shout out to Book Talk Babes. They just did a recent Texas Book Fest recap, and we got to hear about some of the panels that we didn't get to go to. So that was kind of nice to see their perspective. So go check it out if you haven't. But anyways, Margot's Got Money Troubles. It's really good. I actually went in blind. I had seen the cover of this book for a long time, and I know that it's being made into a series for Apple TV. Nicole Kidman is attached to it, Michelle Pfeiffer, Elle Fanning, who also narrates the book for this, and Dakota Fanning is executive producing it. It's really good. I did not know what to expect coming into it, but it's pretty much about this young woman that has a baby when she's like 19 and she has money issues, and then she starts getting into the OnlyFans world, and it is fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good so far. I'm like 50% of it.
I'm learning something about you though, because that's an illustrative cover, correct?
Yes.
And it's in a very similar style to another book you discussed recently, which was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. It's not cowboy themed, but the styles of art are very similar.
Yeah. And, Done and Dusted, I went in and I was just I'm not going to lie, I was a little embarrassed that I was reading it because it is one of those like cheeky like covers that like you just kind of think of like a old school romance novel. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't really attach to it, but I loved it so much. And now I want to do a whole course study on this type of covers because it is so fascinating to me that like this is kind of what is selling, and I love it.
It's a nod to like 70s pulp covers. If you are familiar with pulp books, they used to be very cheap. The pulp was referred to the paper that they were printed on. They were very cheap, kind of like low rent books that you would say, but there is a cult following around them because the art is very cool on them, and they tend to engage with subjects in worlds that were considered to be a bit fringe, or they were romance subjects or things like that. And so I do think it does sort of appeal to both of our tastes, and it makes sense that you were drawn to it now.
Yeah, the Margot's Got Money Troubles, it's really good, and it is, I cannot wait, especially after watching Dark Matter, which also came out on Apple TV Plus. Like now I have like high hopes for, because the adaptations so far have been like 10 out of 10 so far, so I'm excited. Anyways, that's it. I'm also in a weird reading situation. Anyways, yeah, that's all I've read so far. We're in a weird situation.
We really are. We're struggling. And you know what? We're going to get it together. We're going to use our
time off
to get our minds right.
Yeah, we're going to come back, ready, refreshed, to be bit down by Onyx Storm.
Yes, exactly right. Oh, God.
So we're taking a little break so we can prepare for that, but we know we're probably going to need a break after that too.
Yes, we are. And speaking of break, shall we take a break and go into book news?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, welcome back, everybody. So now we're going to go over some book news. I'm going to pass it over to Lindsay to get us started.
Okay, so our first story comes from the American Society of Journalists and Authors and Gotham Ghostwriters, and they've released findings indicating that 1/3 of ghostwriter respondents earn over $100,000 a year in annual income from ghostwriting books.
That's a pretty good sum.
I know.
That's like more than I thought, honestly. I feel like if you can do like one ghostwriting book a year, that's a pretty nice salary.
I I completely agree, and I honestly think that they've earned even more because I'm assuming that a lot of these situations they are ghostwriting for famous people or people who are just attaching their name to a book but don't really have the skills to write it, and dealing with those personalities and trying to navigate a story through the absolute mess that is, you know, I don't want to name any star because I feel
I
like
was
that's
gonna
rude.
thinking like Britney Spears, like the woman in me. I feel like she must have used a ghostwriter.
Exactly right. That is such a hard craft to take someone who has no experience with writing. So, and it does say too that 50% of them do charge between $10,000 to $20,000 per book. So it's not like they're rolling in the dough, but it made me really happy. They've
Yeah,
earned it.
for sure, 100%.
Magda, what do you have for
All
us?
right, and then next up, and it's our last one. We're pretty light on book news this week. uh, we are finding that Chinese language booksellers are flourishing overseas. It looks like there's a really, I think this kind of goes in hand with what we were kind of talking about Japan last week, where there's been a really decline in independent bookstores in China, but that has more to do with a lot of censorship. So the independent bookstores they go through a lot of scrutiny from the government, so they've been closing down. And what's happening is a lot of these business owners are actually moving abroad, and there's been a high influx of bookstores openings that are mainly with Chinese language books, and they've been opening in France, Japan, the US. There was one just recently that opened up in Washington, D.C., that is called JF Books. They just opened up this year, and they've been seeing a really high demand in Chinese language books, which is pretty cool.
I think we had a story about this earlier this year, a similar story about a Russian book publisher who essentially publishes at a deep discount books from Russian authors in exchange for distributing their work and bolstering Russian voices so that they have access to Russian stories outside of government control. It's such an interesting and cleverly subversive way to hear from voices that governments are trying to stifle.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how people are like so smart and they're trying to kind of circumvent like what's kind of like preventing them for being able to kind of discover all these kind of books and stories. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm excited and good for them. So if you happen to be in DuPont Circle, go check out JF Books. And then I think that's all we had. So we'll be right back with some Wicked recap. All right, welcome back, everybody. So now we're gonna get into our Wicked recap. The Wicked, the movie, based on a Broadway play, based on a book, based on The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, there are. This is the Oz cinematic universe that we're getting into right now, which is why we're not going to go super deep into any of the text because it's just far too hard to disentangle the various sources. But I will give like a very quick high level background of the original Wicked book, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. Let's do it.
Okay, so Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West was originally written by Gregory Maguire and published in 1995. It is the first in the Wicked Years series, followed by Son of a Witch, published in September 2005, so funny, A Lion Among Men, published in 2008, and Out of Oz, published in 2011. And this Wicked series is a retelling of the original story of the Wicked Witch of the West, a character originated by L. Frank Baum in his 1900 novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And fun fact about the characters in these texts that we're going to talk about. The name Elphaba is a nod to L. Frank Baum's initials, LFB. So apparently, Gregor Maguire was trying to kind of toy around with how to integrate that, and Elphaba was his way of sort of giving props to the original author.
That is an amazing tidbit. I did
Yeah.
not know that. Oh, so smart, too.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously these are very different novels, and Wicked originally was intended to be sort of a origin story for how someone becomes wicked, and that's sort of the basis for the play and the movie as well.
Mhm. It was, I actually did not know that there were so many books that came after this. I actually really love the name of Son of a Witch.
I
That's so
know.
cute. And I wonder like what that's all about. So
I
yeah,
can tell
thank you
you,
for
but you
that.
don't. I don't know if you want to go down that road. But yeah, it's a variation from what we're going to talk about with Wicked the movie.
Okay.
Elphaba does in fact have a child,
Mm.
and so the book is about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that might be something that it might be worth it for me to kind of go down the rabbit hole. Who knows? I
I don't
have way
know.
too
It's
many
very.
things to
We'll
read.
talk about this when we get into the movie thoughts. But I want to hear. We went and saw the movie yesterday.
Last night, I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, I really loved the musical. It was so great. It was like my first introduction into what Broadway musicals
Mm-hmm.
are. Like that was my very first one that I have ever seen, and it was just so beautiful. And I don't know, they did it justice. I think I was in awe of all of the cast. Everybody was so perfectly casted. I know that I have spoken before about like I was a little nervous about Ariana Grande. Zero, like, yeah, she was perfect. She was absolutely perfect as Glenda, Galinda, whatever. Jonathan Bailey as Fiero, freaking amazing. And we're going to talk about him. Um, Cynthia Erivo, oh my God, like incredible. Like, give her the Oscar already. Just give it to her. She was absolutely incredible. Her, I want to call it stage presence. Like, I could not look away from her every time that she was on screen. Like, she was just perfect.
I completely, you know, it's so funny because the casting is the thing that I agree is what makes the movie so strong. There is not a single other person. I'm convinced of this. And for all the people out there, to your point, who are questioning whether Ariana Grande was well cast in this role, it cannot be anyone else because the chemistry between her and Cynthia Erivo, and I know there's a lot of jokes that's been made around like the press tour where they're like holding hands and crying. But it is so palpable when you watch the film, and it's just you can't have anyone else playing those roles. And I was also struck by the fact that really there's not a lot of dialogue in the movie, particularly from Elphaba, Cynthia Erivo's character. So it is so interesting that I also felt that same way. I could not take my eyes off of her. And yet she's not speaking very much in the movie. Arguably, Galinda has a lot more lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting.
But I think it kind of goes back, and I think we talked about this, not to bring everything back to Pride and Prejudice, but when we're talking about Matthew McFadden, that like he had, like, sometimes he didn't say a whole lot, but it was what he was saying, which just like, I don't know how do you call it, like the body acting, like just
Yeah,
like your
acting.
yeah, I guess your facial expressions, the
Mhm.
way that you use your arms and your hands and stuff, and that's what Cynthia did. Like just her eyes. Oh my God, the most expressive eyes
I
I have
agree.
ever seen. And like you can tell and see exactly what she was thinking and what she was like going through at that moment. And
Mhm.
yeah, just give her the Oscar. That's it.
I mean, my only critique is that Elphaba is supposed to be so physically revolting to the people around her, and yet Cynthia Erivo is so gorgeous that it's sort of like it's like it doesn't matter what color she is, she's stunning human being.
Yeah, she was gorgeous.
Okay, so what were you, apart from just the casting, what were some moments that stood out to you as some of your faves?
I think I got the context for Ifalba. How do you say her name?
Elphaba?
Elphaba. Thank you. I don't know Ifalba. I'm struggling
I
with
don't think it
my
really
English
matters.
today, guys. But I think one of the things that I really appreciated, and I think they delved into the movie a little bit more than they did in the Broadway show, was why she cared so much about the animals. Like we get a little bit more of her background story in the movie about who raised her, because when she was born, we do know that her dad didn't really want her around, like they did, like she felt rejected. But it was actually Dolce Bear, the one that pretty much raised her, and I think that's why it kind of tells us a little bit more as to why her origin story, or why she cared so much for like saving the animals in the Oz world. And I think we just get a little bit more context. And I think I'm kind of learning that I really love context in a lot of things. And like they did such a good job in the movie of it, giving that a little bit of extra background that we didn't get in the show.
That is a nod to the books too. So for those of you that aren't familiar with either text, they are sort of in a lot of ways the book much more so are political retellings of the world of Oz. And as part of the film and part of the play and part of the book, essentially there are animals who can talk. They function very much like human beings. They have political voices, they're educated, and one of the things that they're observing is that animals that can speak and that are educated are sort of disappearing and being caged and being silenced. And it is sort of this uprising, this sort of rebel uprising that you're seeing sort of brewing in the film. And that is a direct nod to the original text, which is very much about the politics. And that's what draws Elphaba into this sort of rebellious personality and an identity that she ultimately, evolves as part of the movie too.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. I don't think, I mean, we kind of talk about it in the Broadway show, right? But I mean, the Broadway show is 2.5 hours total. And now in the movie, the first part of it is 2.5 hours. So I think it's kind of giving them a little bit more extra space for additional dialogue, relationship building, and then getting a little bit of that background info. So it's kind of nice to hear that they're actually grabbing it directly from the book or like as a nod.
It's a nod, yeah. It's not directly from the book, but the book is, because the book is far edgier than the play,
yeah?
and it's a lot more about the politics. You get like, I mean, there are like political parties. But it's very, I do think it comes through very well as part of the movie, and I really like that. If anything, my one critique of the movie is that I would have taken that as a series that was 15 episodes long. I wanted the movie to be longer, and I rarely say that. It's 2 hours and 40-minute runtime.
I mean, like, yeah, I think like the way that the movie ended, like we're just not, I mean, it's kind of goes into the Broadway play. Like if you've ever seen it, it's like where intermission
It's act
happens.
one. Yeah.
Like it's act one, like that intermission happened and that's where the movie ended. But it was just, I don't know, it was so beautiful. And I think Act One is so much more naive and like we're just kind of starting to learn what is kind of brewing underneath it all, like kind of what you're mentioning, that I'm excited and kind of nervous about Act Two because that's when it's going to start getting a lot darker. Like I feel like we're going through, again, bringing everything back to now Harry Potter, where like you just kind of start kind of nice and everything is glossy and pink and beautiful, and now moving into this darker world of things that are going to happen next.
I know it bums me out because one of the most beautiful things about this movie, I know people were very emotional about this movie. I personally didn't have the same reaction as some people. I loved the movie, but it didn't hit me in that way. But I think it is a very good tale of the importance of female friendship. And between Elphaba and Galinda, you see these two people coming from very different backgrounds with very different motivations, sort of reaching out and meeting each other where they are. And that is so lovely. And you ultimately know that, we know the story, their relationship disintegrates and they establish that from the beginning. And so it is kind of heartbreaking to know that that's coming.
I know, it is kind of sad. What else did you love about the movie? Like what kind of caught you by surprise about it?
Okay, I mean, the heavy thing that I think is tough about the movie is one of the scenes that I really loved was how Galinda changes her name to Glinda, and it's because Dr. Dillamond, who is a goat, has no front teeth, and so he has a hard time pronouncing her name, and so in a self-serving act of solidarity, she changes her name from Galinda to Glinda. But one of the things I think is so brilliant about this movie is how it talks about very heavy themes in the context of something that's so light and airy. And that scene in particular, I think, talks about this like Americanization of names. Like when you were even saying earlier, like, is it Elphaba? Is it Elphaba? Like we've talked about this in pronunciations in general. Like she sort of has to like adjust it. And it just opens up a conversation. I don't think there's anything to be taken one way or another from this scene other than like I think it speaks to this conversation around
fitting in,
homogenization and fitting in. Exactly right. Yeah.
That's actually like a really good call out because to me it was just like I didn't think about that scene too much, but you're absolutely right. Like I think it kind of goes under what was brewing underneath with the book and then the context on the whole thing of like all the political things that are happening. So it's just like little hints of what people are doing just to kind of change stuff. Yeah, they did really. Yeah, the movie was just in general was just so beautiful. I am wondering, I think you mentioned about this. We saw a lot of TikToks and I think I sent this to you where I'm like, people are leaving the theaters like crying, like they're filming themselves and they're just like like sobbing. And I was getting ready because I think we just came from a very emotional week and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna wreck me, but it didn't. So I'm like, well, oh my gosh, like am I like, do I have a heart of stone? Like what is happening?
I didn't even get close. Yeah, there was only one scene that even got me close to crying, and that's the scene where Elphaba and Galinda ultimately like cement their friendship
with the dancing
Yes,
scene.
with the dancing.
That to me was the one that like kind of got me a little warm eyes, I guess. Yeah,
Warm
warm
eyes. Oh my
eyes.
God, that's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
Anything about female friendships is
Yeah,
going to get me. Yeah.
yeah. That one was the one that I'm like, oh my gosh, and like Galinda's coming from a place of like, hey, I'm the cool person and I know that I can kind of change the perceptions for everybody around me. So she actually was using her power for good. So Galinda the good kind of came out here a little bit
But
in a
she
way.
struggles so much. And I think
Mhm.
again, everything comes back to this conversation that we have about like niceness versus goodness.
Mhm.
Galinda is nice and Elphaba is good.
Yes.
And I think they do a really good job of teasing out the complexities of that, where one of them sort of leans in the direction of the other and how hard it is to navigate getting to goodness. I think they do that so well in the movie.
Yeah, they did. You know, you're absolutely right. And I guess it's like the fourth book or movie that we've kind of gotten into that type of
Mhm.
argument. And I love that everything kind of goes back to it.
And Firo is a really good example of someone who sort of straddles the line between both. I think he's struggling with wanting to be perceived as nice and fun and carefree, but
Mhm.
wants to be good in his soul. And that's sort of the crux of the issue for his character.
Yeah, I'm kind of really looking forward to part two because I think we're gonna get a more fleshed out Fiero and like
Mhm.
what underneath of it all, like what he kind of like really believes in. Because I think in the first act he just comes as a very superficial prince, right? But we kind of get little hints of like who he might be, and like I think even Galinda talks about it. He's like he's just kind of starting to think.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but like we kind of get little glimpses of it. But I know that in Act Two, if it kind of follows what we've seen in the Broadway show, we're gonna get a lot more of his personality and who he really is and what his motivations are.
And again, for those of you who are less familiar with these texts, Firo is the main love interest for both characters. He comes from Winkyland. He's very handsome. He's sort of a Lothario. He's our rake.
He's our Jonathan Bailey.
He is our Jonathan Bailey.
Which I think, as you guys know, we are utterly obsessed with him. He did such a great job. Amazing singer, super talented. He played so well. And there was one scene that Lindsay and I just looked at each other in the middle of the theater and laughed out loud because he put like his like prince face on of like such a flirt friend prince. I don't even know how to describe
He doesn't
it.
even say anything in the moment. He just sort of
Looks.
moves his head a little bit and like raises his eyebrow, and you're really he's just so handsome.
Like, dang, Jonathan, you know what you're working with, and I appreciate
He's
that.
going in our Mr. Darcy bracket for sure.
He really is.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Mr. Darcy bracket will be coming out during the holidays because I know you guys are going to need a space, to kind of get away from things. So, what best way to do it than during the
We
holidays?
need nominations.
Yeah, so please send that over.
I have my number one in mind, but yeah.
But I do think Jonathan Bailey should potentially go into that list. Anyways, I don't know. Fun fact, I don't know if you heard about this, but the horse that was used for Fiyero was actually the same horse that was in Bridgerton.
No
Jack the
kidding.
horse. And it was Jonathan Bailey that he asked, like, hey, can I just use the same horse that I've been using in Bridgerton? And they allowed that request. And now nepotism for horses. Hey, it's a real thing, guys. I love it.
That horse didn't deserve that opportunity. We need a horse.
Horse representation.
Oh, we're just kidding. And we know he has a relationship with the horse. We're just joking
Yeah,
around.
he's great. Jack,
Just joking around.
he did such a good job. We love Jack the horse.
Jack the horse. Okay, here was another thing I had a question about too, because, and again, I haven't seen the play. I've read the book. It's been a long time. But in the movie, did we establish Elphaba's relationship with water?
Not yet. We haven't.
I thought about that a lot.
Yeah, we haven't yet. And I think that potentially in the Broadway show, I think it might come in Act 2, if I remember correctly, because that all comes from a rumor from, what's her name? Madame Morrible, which, by the way, it's a name that is like really on your face, but I kind of love it.
I love it too.
So Madame Morrible, we should have known it coming when the first time that we watched it. I just never put two and two together. Because she's the one that is going to like originate that, that rumor, I believe, that like she's like scared of water, and I don't think that's happened just yet.
Okay, because I know that she says at some point in the movie, we need to get you out of the rain. And I thought, this is so strange because this bitch is running around water left and right. She's flying up in the clouds. She's dancing over ponds. And I was like, is she going to be okay? Because that is, I haven't seen the play, but I have read the book. And that is a real thing. She is affected by water.
Oh, I think in the movie, in the Broadway show, I believe it's just like a rumor, and then she just kind of uses it on her favor. to kind of get away at the end.
Okay, see, that's very interesting. That's a huge difference because the Wicked text follows the Wizard of Oz exactly in terms of the outcome for the Wicked Witch of the West, which I think is a huge difference between the two.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going off of like a 15-year-old memory, but I believe like she's not really impacted by water. She just uses that thing to be able to just kind of like finish the whole story.
But that's
out
what I'm saying. That
completely.
doesn't happen in the book.
Oh,
That's what different. In the
it's
book,
very
she
different. Okay.
Dorothy is an assassin.
Mm-hmm.
The wizard sends her after the Wicked Witch of the West, and she dies. Dorothy kills her.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, that's not the way that happens in the Broadway show, y'all, which I guess I'm
We'll have to
much more
decide if we
fan
keep
of
this in.
it.
That's a major
Yeah.
spoiler, but it does follow the text exactly that way.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, yeah, so
No.
that's not what happens in the Broadway show.
Well, very different. So again,
Yeah.
different. That's the primary difference between them. They're tonally quite different because it is. I mean, in a lot of ways, like Wicked is like Animal Farm. You are following political intrigue. There's a lot more grayness in the morality of the characters.
Yeah.
It's obviously over a much larger time span, and Elphaba be dead.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not. I think maybe that's why I love the Broadway show so much, because like we do kind of get. I love the show so much because it kind of gave you so much context of the things that kind of happen in like the Wizard of Oz. It just kind of puts it into context of like what the Wicked Witch of the West was trying to do. And I loved it. But in the end, in the Broadway show, we do kind of get like a really nice,
We're light and bright.
yeah, like at the, like we do kind of get like a little happiness for Elphaba. Oh my gosh, why can't I
You can
pronounce
say
her
it
name
however the hell
today?
you want. There's no
With
pronunciation
Elfie.
police.
I'm just gonna like go with
Elfie.
what Glinda says, and it's just gonna be Elfie, and I love it. Anything else that you loved about the movie that you want to call out? I do have one.
Okay, yeah, tell me.
And I love the cameos from Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel.
Oh my gosh, yes, that was beautiful.
It was so nice, and it was I was reading about it, and they actually expanded the lyrics for the song that they were singing at that moment, which was Wizomania or something like that. I forget what it was called. But like they actually extended the lyrics, and this was some of the new lyrics that were written for the movie, and it was to be able to kind of write in Kristen and Idina's characters into it. And it was so beautiful because they made such a nice like ode to their way that they play their characters, and the way that like Kristen Chenoweth acted with Ariana Grande, which is like what you would expect if you had two Glindas on the set, which was so perfect. And then we kind of get a little bit of an ode of like Idina doing the Defying Gravity perfect. I'm not even going to attempt to sing it. No, you know what? I am going to attempt to sing it. No, see, don't put that in the episode. That's really terrible.
I'm putting it in there. It's staying in.
But like, you know, like that really famous, like,
Yeah, that one.
perfect.
Yeah.
You did it so beautiful. I think you missed your calling for a Broadway actress.
Are
I
you
love
kidding me?
it.
That was me like screeching. Yeah, we'll take it out though. Yeah.
So there's like a little note to that, and I thought it was so beautiful, and the way that the characters were playing with each other, like the new and then the old, you know, Glinda and Elfie. I just loved it. It was so beautiful, and it was not something that I was expecting at all. And you just kind of got me in my feels.
It also, I think, sort of deflates the idea that these two things need to compete with each other, and that the Kristen Chenoweth Glinda is the same as the Ariana Grande Glinda, and same for Idina Menzel and Cynthia Erivo. They are bringing different things. They are different actors, and I love that they were just sort of like, yeah, we're passing the baton onto this
Exactly.
version of it. And again, going back to the casting, it could not have been anyone else. Could not.
It was just beautifully. Like, I just want to apologize 1,000 times because I was a little nervous. I knew that Ariana has like the vocal cords to kind of do the music justice, but just her acting was so
It was good. Her comedic timing was, and I know like a lot of people were vying for Amanda Seyfried to do this, and Amanda Seyfried released her tape of this. And I love Amanda Seyfried. This was not her role. It wasn't.
I don't think the chemistry between Elphaba and Glinda would have been there, like, which is something that you mentioned earlier. If it would have been, I mean, I don't know, I say that, but I just think Ariana just did such a good job. It was
Even her little, when she's flipping her hair and she does that lean back away, she leans away from the camera like she's curtsying, and she does it casually many times during a conversation. It's a bold choice to do that because it looks really weird, but she pulls it off so well that you're like, oh, these weird little hair flips and this lean. Oh, I'm like she's fainting while standing and then remaining upright. It's funny. It really works. And her little doe eyes. And then Cynthia Erivo, who has, I think, a more grounded presence in the movie, they're just perfect opposites in that way.
It was just so beautiful. I think, I don't know if Ariana Grande was a theater kid, but it just came
You can
across.
tell that she is.
Oh my God, it
You can
was
tell.
so
Yeah.
great. Just everything was so dramatic and on point, and what you kind of expect from this bubbly princess. And I don't know, it was
Hmm.
so good. Perfect casting. I'm so glad. I know we talked about it in the past. I know that they put her through the ringer to be able to get
And they
this
should
role.
have.
She had to audition, like she had to fight for this role, and she had to campaign and be able to do it and audition way more than any of the other people that kind of like auditioned for it because they were not sure. And yeah, I think well deserved. It was great.
And you know something else that's in this movie that I absolutely want to be brought back in a million more movies? And it reminded me of like something from the early 2000s, are coordinated multi-person dance scenes in the context of a school environment. Like the dancing was it was interesting choreography, but it was also so satisfying. It was taking me back to like a She's All That moment or something like that. I loved it.
It was great. You know what? You are right. Oh, She Sold That. What a classic rom-com movie. They don't make them like they used to.
They
But
don't.
no, this was really great. I think I also kind of want to give a quick shout out to Madame Morbo, played by Michelle Yeoh.
Oh, Michelle Yeoh. Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh.
God. Like, incredible. She was amazing. She only had like one song to sing, and it was like a low octane, so which is fine. But like, it was incredible. Like, I think she can play an evil character like nobody's
Because
business.
it's simmering evil. There's
Yeah.
nothing, you know that she's bad kind of from the beginning, but you're not sure why because her actions are
Mhm.
all good. She does that so well. And you're right, you mentioned the singing. I think her and Jeff Goldblum, like not traditionally trained singers, but
Mhm.
they pull it off
So well.
so well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here for it. Obviously,
Mhm.
like nobody's going to compare to Cynthia and Ariana on here. Like they
And
are the
that's not the point
stars,
of yeah.
but they just did. It was incredible. Like Jeff Goldblum also did an amazing job. Jonathan Bailey, I did not know that he could sing,
Oh
and
my
like
gosh, incredible.
it was amazing. Like he's seen on like the library and like that whole dancing sequence and everything. It was so amazing. I love also this one also brought like one of my favorite moments from Ariana Grande where she was giving the tour to Fierro and she goes like, and this is the book place where they have books. Like she didn't even know that it was called like a library. I don't know. It was just so beautifully
It was
done.
very
It's,
funny.
it's nice.
Okay, I have a little fun fact too about Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, yeah.
A little bookish fun fact too. We're gonna
Hmm.
move into our fun fact section, maybe.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so Jeff Goldblum recently did an interview with InStyle as part of the promotion of this movie. And he had a moment where he gets really teary eyed talking about when he met his wife. She told him that she'd never read The Great Gatsby. And so he read her The Great Gatsby and then continued reading it to her as their relationship evolved. And I don't know why this unlocked something deep in me, but the thought of someone reading to me in adulthood is so relaxing. And he's reading the first line of the book. And that's where you get teary eyed. I'm just going to read it really quickly here. It says, whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you have had. And he
Oh.
is getting teared up when he's doing the interview, Jeff Goldblum. And I just really loved that moment.
You're coming in clutch with all of the amazing quotes from books lately, Lindsay, and I love this so much. Well, last week you also gave one from like the Abraham Lincoln book that you
Oh, Lincoln and the
mentioned.
Bardo. Yeah.
Yeah, that one was really good. Now this one, well, they're all like really good.
Well,
I
I
love
mean,
it.
I have to give a nod to Jeff Goldblum because
Yeah,
he reminded me of this line, and I think it's just so beautiful,
yeah.
and I love that he was so affected by it. And I just think in a world where we're talking about the intersection between theater and books and movies, it was a nice full circle moment during that interview.
Yeah. Also, I don't think I have like as much of a deep fun fact for you
Oh,
as
oh God,
that.
it's not deep. I just watched an interview on InStyle.
But we know that we have Bowen Yang, who is from SNL.
Oh,
He's one of the characters. He was also hilarious. Like his
yes.
acting was so good, and
Also, not
loved
from
it.
the original play, but in the book,
Yeah.
those two characters.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. He did a really good job, but actually, because when the movie was being filmed, kind of interacted and kind of overlapped with a lot of the SNL schedule. And if you guys are not aware, the SNL schedule is pretty grueling. They're only allowed to film like extra projects during the summer. And Lauren Michaels said like, "No, thank you. You're not doing that, or you just leave." But it took Ariana Grande had to make a couple calls to Lauren to kind of let him be able to miss a couple of shows so he would be able to kind of finish filming the movie, which I thought that was really nice.
Good on her.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And then the other fun thing too, so I don't think it was very obvious during the promotions of this movie that this is like the part one. Once you go into the movie, they make it really clear. Like it does say like Wicked Part One. The second movie, the part two, is actually gonna be coming out next year, November 21st,
Thank
2025.
goodness.
So I think they already filmed everything. They just kind of got split up in half, which is kind of cool.
So we'll meet back here in a year
Mhm.
to continue this conversation.
I think it's gonna be good, kind of dark, y'all. So we're gonna be in moody lighting over here next year.
We'll be bringing the tissues because I will probably be
Yeah.
equally emotional.
100%. And then another quick thing. So John Chu was the one that directed this movie, and he's gonna be making the biopic for Britney Spears on that "The Woman in Me" book rights. Like we talked about it in a couple of our past episodes. So I'm like really excited now. 'Cause I don't know if that's gonna be a musical. What's gonna happen with that? I have no idea, but I have full faith in him because now I know that he can do it all.
He can do anything.
So
Yes.
I'm excited for that. All right. Anything else that we want to chat about Wicked?
No, I generally loved it. I highly encourage, it's not kid appropriate. I would say that, but I highly encourage, even my husband who doesn't care about musicals was like sort of depressed that he didn't get an invite to go, which should tell you the power of this movie. It really is. It's great.
Yeah, it was really good, y'all. Like, I think, and I'm kind of glad because I felt like sometimes once you go into a movie that is being overhyped, it doesn't kind of live up to those expectations. And I don't think people had done that overhyping it to Wicked. I don't think I got that vibe because I think there's some kind of haters out there that were kind of trying to bring down some of like the actresses, kind of like already kind of shitting on them. But like once you go into this, like they did beautiful. Like it was amazing, and they did not deserve the hype. No, they didn't get enough hype as they should have because it was incredible. Everything was done so beautiful. Acting, singing, just give them all of the awards.
I mean, it's pretty rare that a 2 hour and 40-minute movie, I'm saying, I want more. I wanted it to be longer.
Yeah.
It didn't make me cry, but it is so solid.
Yeah, I think Act 2 is when it's gonna make us cry a lot. I'm gonna get ready for that. All right, anything else?
No.
All right, well, thank you for listening to Literally Books, the podcast.
Where we say what we read.
And we mean what we say. Bye.